The morgue was silent as the grave, the only sound the relentless hum of fluorescent lights. I leaned in close, scrutinizing the corpse's wounds with a critical eye. Something about them nagged at me, like an itch I couldn't scratch. My name's Kate Zhang. I've been working the night shift as a medical examiner for longer than I care to admit. You see a lot of strange things in my line of work, but this was new. The man had been found that morning, body broken and battered, deep lacerations covering his torso. Police suspected an animal attack, but the bite radius didn't match any species indigenous to the area. The wounds almost looked human. I peered closer, noting the torn, mangled flesh, too ragged for a knife, but not enough crushing damage for a bear or mountain lion. Ragged, as if something had fed on him. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. There was something almost ritualistic about the wounds, like occult symbols carved into flesh. I shook my head, fighting off childhood superstitions. Just a freak animal attack, nothing more. As I prepped for the Y incision, my gaze fell on the corpse's hands. His fingernails, yellowed and crusted with blood, appeared several inches longer than normal. Unease trickled down my spine. Rigor mortis didn't explain the strange growth. I lifted the magnifying glass, leaning down for a closer look, and saw the nails actually extending before my eyes. I recoiled, heart lurching. Some post-mortem glandular reaction, I theorized. An anomalous phenomenon, but nothing supernatural. I was letting my imagination get the better of me. Still, I couldn't tear my eyes away as the nails crept steadily longer, clicking against the metal table. Get a hold of yourself, Kate. I turned my attention back to the Y incision, scalpel poised to make the first cut. I flicked on the recorder. Unknown male, apparent age late 30s, presenting with massive tissue trauma concentrated around the thoracic area. I pressed the blade to the chest cavity and a loud crack made me whip my head up. One nail had grown several inches too long and snapped off. A thin line of blood trickled from the quick. My heart seized in my chest. Blood flow meant. No, it wasn't possible. He was dead. I checked myself, but I couldn't deny the subtle rise and fall of the chest. The corpse was breathing. Panic flooded my brain. I stumbled back, scalpel falling and clattering loudly in the silence. This couldn't be real. It had to be an oxygen-deprived hallucination. Some sort of waking nightmare. Security. I shouted, my voice shrill. I need help. No response came. The intercom light blinked mute and red, almost mockingly. I was alone. A wet, viscous sound brought my attention snapping back. The nails, now fully regrown, were slowly emerging from the corpse's flesh. Fresh blood flowed over its hands as all 10 pushed their way out, then were rapidly replaced by new growths. It was regenerating. The icy fingers of dread clenched my heart. This was no freak glandular reaction. No pathology I'd ever seen or studied. This was other. The corpse's mouth yawned open with a crack of bone and sinew. A choking rattle emanated from its throat. Bloody lips smacked, forming guttural words.
Starving.
I screamed. Turned to run. But my legs gave out, paralyzed by primordial terror. I crashed to the floor, the tile icy against my cheek. Behind me came a wet tearing, the snap of restraints being rent like tissue paper. I couldn't bring myself to turn, could only whimper as heavy footfalls thudded closer. Rancid breath washed over me, redolent with the scent of the grave. Strong hands gripped my shoulders, flipping me onto my back. I stared up at the thing looming over me, gagging at the sight. It was the corpse, but changed. Elongated teeth jutted from its yawning mouth, framed by desiccated lips. The skin had taken on a gray, necrotic pallor that seemed to writhe over its musculature. But its eyes were the worst. Bloodshot orbs burning with frenzied hunger stared out from sunken sockets. They blazed with a feral desperation that chilled my soul. "Please," I whimpered. It pressed me down, fetid drool dripping on my face as it lowered its head. I turned aside, screwing my eyes shut as its teeth scraped the tender skin of my neck. This was my punishment, I realized. My penance for past mistakes. I thought back to the man I had misdiagnosed a year ago, sending him home with a clean bill of health only for him to die of heart failure that night. More diligence could have saved him. But I had been distracted, complacent, and now death had come for me. I felt the corpse's skin split and peel beneath my palms as I beat against it in vain. My blows seemed only to spur it on, teeth clamping tighter, prepping to tear out my jugular. This was how I would die, not from a noble sacrifice or heroic effort, but pinned beneath a monster in a cold morgue, alone and forgotten. I wept at the injustice, cursed the unfairness of it all. The corpse abruptly released me, head cocked, regarding me with those unsettling eyes. My blood stained its teeth crimson. It seemed to be listening. Seizing my chance, I scrambled back in terror until I hit the wall. The thing watched me for a long moment, utterly still save for the writhing of necrotic skin. Then its lips peeled back in what I can only describe as a grin. Before my unbelieving eyes, coarse hair began sprouting from its skin. Fingernails lengthened into claws with a sickening crackle. Its torso expanded, shirt tearing as the shoulders broadened impossibly wide. Every primal instinct screamed at me to run, but my limbs wouldn't obey. I could only watch, paralyzed, as the transformation overtook it. Bones snapped and reformed beneath distorting flesh. The thing threw back its head, howling in what sounded like pained ecstasy. Jaws elongated into a ragged snout lined with jagged fangs. Those burning eyes seemed to glow brighter, overflowing with frenzied hunger and inhuman intelligence. It towered at 7 feet tall now, a hulking hybrid nightmare of fur and muscle. I gazed up at it, heart seized by mortal dread. The legends were true. Werewolf. It lowered onto all fours, lips rippling as a guttural growl echoed from its barrel chest. My bladder released, warmth spreading down my legs. I could only whimper and await the inevitable. When it pounced, the speed and ferocity was astonishing. I managed a single truncated scream before a claw opened my belly in one vicious swipe. The next moments were nothing but agony and panic as it shredded me with abandon. My last living sight was its muzzle buried in my stomach, strips of flesh dangling from its jaws. Those burning eyes stared into mine, alight with feral ecstasy. Then merciful darkness took me as it tore out my throat. I pray my death was quick, that no scrap of consciousness remained trapped in my ruined shell of a body. But even that may have been too much to ask for. When they found me, or what was left, I can only imagine it resembled a slaughterhouse. Even in life, I'd been nothing, just another statistic who deserved her fate. But in death, I transcended into nightmare. Floorboards creaked under my feet as I moved through the house, checking the locks on every window and door for the third time tonight. The shadows seemed to leap and twist as I peered out into the darkness, clutching my son Jason close. Something evil lurked out there in the woods tonight. I could feel it in my bones. "Is it the wolves again, Mama?" Jason asked, voice muffled against my shoulder. He was only 8, but he knew our remote forest town's dark history, as well as anyone who lived here. "Could be wolves," I said slowly. "Could be something worse." We'd found the first mutilated deer carcass last week, guts strewn about in strange patterns. The next day, giant paw prints were spotted near old Miller's pond. Prints that walked on 2 legs rather than 4. Then the howls started at night. Unnatural, guttural howls that drove the townsfolk to bar doors and windows. Folk who once mocked at the whispered tales of occult rituals in these woods years past, of men who donned wolf pelts and fell under sway of the wild moon. Something ancient and evil was awakening in the forest. I could feel its hungry eyes on me even now. Jason sniffled against me as I set him down with a kiss on the brow. "Get some rest, love. I'll keep watch tonight." He peered up with trusting eyes. "You'll keep them away, Mama?" "Whatever's out there, it'll have to go through me first," I said, ruffling his hair before turning to the living room. I left one lamp on, surrounding myself with a meager ring of light that did little to pierce the oppressive gloom outside. The ghastly howls tore through the night again. Closer now. The hair on my neck prickled as I loaded the shotgun with trembling hands. The shells clicked into place with dreadful finality. Something slammed against the front door, making me cry out. The wood groaned but held. For the moment, I raised the shotgun, backing toward Jason's room. The picture window exploded inward with a crash of glass. Hulking silhouettes swarmed over the sill, eyes glowing in the darkness. I glimpsed slavering jaws and raised hackles before opening fire. The shotgun boomed, flashing like lightning in the gloom. Wet, choking yelps answered me, but more kept coming, their guttural snarls mixed with a very human cruelty. I fired until the gun clicked empty. In the muzzle flash afterglow, I saw several twitching forms on the floor amidst the broken glass, but at least 3 more had made it inside. I dropped the shotgun and turned as clawed feet thudded down the hall. Toward Jason's room, rage and terror crashed together inside me like a wave about to break. I would not lose my son tonight. With a primal scream, I launched myself at the intruders, wielding a kitchen knife in each hand. I sank the blades into matted fur and sinew as we crashed to the floor. The beasts were strong, far stronger than any human, but a mother's love can grant astonishing power. I kept stabbing even as claws raked agonizing furrows across my back and shoulders, kept fighting even as razor-sharp teeth tore at my neck. I felt only savage joy when my knives bit deep over and over, releasing hot gouts of fetid blood. The beasts' snarls turned to whimpers beneath me. Their foul stench overwhelmed my senses when at last they lay still. I rose on shaky legs, my torn nightgown wet with blood and gore. From both them and me, that detail seemed unimportant. I left the creatures to turn cold in their own blood and filth. Lurching to Jason's door on leaden feet, it took 3 tries to turn the knob with hands slippery as the grave. Some part of me already knew in that moment what I would find, or rather what I wouldn't. But still I shuffled inside, dripping a macabre trail across the hardwood floor. "Jason." My voice cracked as I peered into the gloom. His bed lay empty, sheets tossed aside in a struggle. Blood spattered the headboard. I collapsed to my knees with a wail, the last dregs of strength fleeing my broken body. My vision swam crimson as the wounds finally overcame me. I curled there on the cold floor, clutching my son's bloodied sheets. They had come for him. My only light, my reason for enduring this harsh existence, ripped away by the merciless dark. I wept until no more tears would come, my ragged sobs echoing through the empty house. Perhaps I could have borne any other loss in this world, but not this. The silence seemed to mock me as I lay shattered amidst the ruins of my life. The beasts had vanished like ghosts, taking my heart and soul with them, leaving behind a shell of a woman with nothing left to lose. As the last drops of life ebbed from my body, A spark ignited in my fading mind. A final surge of defiance and rage against the dying of the light. Hands slick with my own blood, I slowly dragged myself up, leaning hard on furniture and walls for support. Back down the nightmare hallway, leaving a gruesome trail in my wake. The creatures there welcomed me with glassy, sightless eyes. I rifled through their matted fur, seeking what I needed. At last my trembling fingers closed around a sharp fang in the largest one's maw. Gritting through the agony, I carved into my forearm until the blood flowed anew. I wasn't done fighting. Not yet. If vengeance was to be denied to me in this life, then I would seek it beyond death's veil instead. The legends were true, it seemed, and if damnation awaited me for what I planned, then so be it. A literal hell could be no worse than the one I currently inhabited. My Jason. I'm coming for you, my love. And death itself can't stop me. Let the moon turn red with blood.